Greetings there, lads and lasses. Now, I just saw the new Ant-Man movie, and let me tell you, it is not very good. Now, the acting was great. I expected nothing less from these actors. There were some good emotional moments in the story, but that's about it. Now, this isn't going to be a review of the full movie. I'm just interested in one subject, and that's how the multiverse continues to just not make any sense. Now, as we all know, the MCU has been on its death throes since Infinity War came out, with Endgame, the Spider-Man films, and Hawkeye being the only real pieces of media I can think of that haven't completely failed their characters and stories. Sure, some of them aren't the best, there's some serious flaws in them, but the fact that Hawkeye was somehow more internally consistent than something like Multiverse of Madness, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or whatever Eternals and Black Widow was supposed to be, is just beyond me. Now, it's true, some films don't have to be amazing. Some of these MCU films are just easygoing popcorn filler films to help flesh out future stories. Thor: The Dark World isn't the best, but it had some good emotional character points, and it helped to clarify what the Reality Stone is and where Thanos needs to go in order to get it in Infinity War. Ant-Man and the Wasp was a mostly low-stakes film that didn't really push any boundaries or take any risks, but it helped to set up the quantum realm for Endgame. WandaVision was an abomination of storytelling.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
Forcing inconsistent themes down the characters' throats and struggling to retcon new stories into the canon, but we needed this TV show to completely assassinate Wanda as a character so that we would hate her in time for her being a villain in Multiverse of Madness. See, everything leads into each other one way or the other. But the main thing that Phase 4 was teasing is the existence of the multiverse, using shows like Loki, What If, No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness in order to tease the multiversal war, with Kang being the main villain for the main story of Phase 5 and 6. Unfortunately, Loki, What If, No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness all have different rules and world building that seems to completely contradict each other, which is especially hilarious for the case of Loki and Multiverse of Madness, as they share the same writer, Michael Waldron. Now, if you're interested in seeing just how bad his writing is, feel free to check out my other video on Avengers Secret Wars. But overall, he just has no clue how to write consistently. Now, before we move on to how Quantumania is badly written, let me explain how the multiverse hasn't made sense so far. So in Loki, it's established that the different Kangs from across the multiverse kept interacting with each other, and eventually they started trying to conquer each and every universe. Then, He Who Remains went back in time and started to prune any timelines that would lead to any other timelines that weren't his. Now, he has to eliminate these timelines immediately, because these new timelines can spawn an infinite amount of other timelines, which means an infinite amount of other Kangs. So, Loki establishes that 1. Other individuals can cross between universes and affect those universes without any problems. 2. When there's a change, the change needs to be pruned as soon as possible, in less than 24 hours at most by the looks of things, because if not, then a whole bunch of other universes, and therefore Kangs, will come into existence. Now, during this show, we see multiple different versions of Loki, and some of these make sense. We have classic Loki, who went on the same journey that the MCU Loki went through, the only difference being that he faked his death at the hands of Thanos, and was then pruned when he tried to leave his exile. And we have Kid Loki, whose timeline was pruned when he killed Thor. These timelines seem possible. It seems like something that could add up alongside the MCU timeline if things went a little bit differently. Unfortunately, we also have other variants like Boastful Loki, Sylvie, and Crokey. Now, these Lokis should have been pruned as soon as they were born, for very obvious reasons. I don't care if the reason the show gives is that Sylvie wanted to be a hero, or if Crokey ate the wrong cat. The fact that these Lokis don't look exactly like the mainline Loki should have gotten them pruned immediately. For He Who Remains to be born, Loki needs to be a white, male humanoid, otherwise other timelines would have been made. Of course, the actual reasons that these characters exist is because Michael wrote a story and he couldn't be bothered to follow his own rules to make sure it made sense. because if he did, he would have known the fact that this would have already shattered the timelines and created a multiverse. Anyways, by the end of the series, they killed He Who Remains and got the multiverse restarted from this point on. This means that in the mainline MCU, the multiverse should only be changing from this point on, as people cannot travel back in time into their own timeline, and everything from the start of time up until Avengers Endgame was protected by He Who Remains. Then we have What If, and its interpretation of the multiverse. This show too emphasises that people can come and go into other universes without any risks, as many main characters join up and fight alongside each other, and in the end a Black Widow is deployed by the Watcher into another universe with the implication that she's going to live there. Unfortunately, this show also sets up that the Watcher is part of a system that not only answers to a higher power that is interested in the multiverse and creation, but the Watcher himself is dedicated to the protection of the multiverse itself, showing himself being willing to step in when the threat of the multiverse getting destroyed is apparent. Except He Who Remains essentially destroyed all the universes to ensure his existence wasn't ended by another Kang, which brings in the big question of why the Watcher, a being who shows that ultimately he cares more about helping people over his vow of non-interference, chose not to stop Kang as he destroyed the entire multiverse and killed trillions upon trillions of sentient beings. So at this point on, you've not only got one show that contradicts and interferes with its own logic, you've now got two different shows that have two different points of view that cannot be collaborated with each other and make sense. Then we add No Way Home, which doesn't actually add a lot in terms of the rules of the multiverse. All we see is that different individuals can come to a different universe and interact with it without any consequences. Large-scale battles can destroy buildings, the individuals can be broadcasted all over the news, and they can kill people, and there's no effect on the universe. They're just an aspect of the timeline now, and that's that. The only reason why the universe is under threat is because of the misuse of a magic spell, not because of the fundamental aspects of the universe and how the multiverse works. And this does line up with what has been established in both Loki and What If. And then we had Multiverse of Madness, which proceeded to take everything that was established in the previous bits of media and smashed it up with a hammer. In this film, the only thing that's consistent with the previous examples is that magic can be used to reach different universes, with the ability to dreamwalk into other universes. What this movie introduces is that 1. When you have a dream, you're actually looking into another universe, and 2. When you go into another universe, you run the risk of incursions happening. This can lead to one or both of the universes being destroyed, meaning that if you stay in a universe for too long, or interfere with it too much, it'll cause an incursion. So as you can tell, this movie just destroys everything we've learned from the ground up. So this film is saying that dreams didn't exist until this point in time. It's established that America Chavez doesn't have dreams because she's the only one in existence in the multiverse. So before Endgame, it's literally saying that in the history of mankind, no one was able to dream. This is a serious point in the film. At the end of the film, Doctor Strange seems very optimistic that America Chavez will be able to find her mothers. Except this was over a decade ago. Surely an incursion would have destroyed their universes by now. And Doctor Strange already knows how incursions work, so why would he tell her this? And the scene doesn't frame it as him lying about it, he seems genuinely sincere about it. Also, why is he letting America stay in this universe when she isn't from here? He's just letting an incursion grow in the main timeline and he just doesn't care? This scene literally contradicts everything we've learned in Multiverse of Madness, and yet Michael Waldron just writes this completely seriously. How did Kang manage to meet themselves, improve their universes, and conquer each other, when this would have led to them getting destroyed by incursions immediately, considering how much they would have altered the fabric of their universes? America Chavez met Defender Strange and has known him for long enough to be deeply hurt when he betrays her. But that doesn't make sense because surely by this point the universe would have been destroyed for that friendship to be built up, especially when you've got reality destroying monsters coming after her. We see different characters from different universes and points in time come into the MCU and affect the world, causing chaos and killing people, needing Strange to do a spell that would affect the entire multiverse to save the day, but that somehow doesn't cause an incursion. We have an altered universe Gamora running around in the main timeline, and Steve managed to stay for several decades in an alternate universe. Except from these rules that doesn't make sense, because simply being in another universe for a few hours is enough of a threat that the Illuminati consider killing Doctor Strange. But then how did Steve manage to stay for several decades? The main timeline has progressed by several years since Endgame, but this alternate Gamora is still here, so how does that make sense? And it can't be because of He Who Remains keeping the timelines intact, because as soon as we see this Loki teleport away, the entire Loki series happens due to the non-linear time structure that the show operates on, which means that by the time the crew finish their time heist, He Who Remains should be dead. The Watcher is now also a complete idiot because despite being a highly powerful galactic being, he seemingly doesn't even understand the rules around his own job. The risk of incursion would lead to the deaths of two universes, something the Watcher doesn't want to happen because at the end of the first season he values life over his own oath, yet he deliberately leaves Black Widow in another universe, which would lead to an incursion happening. So now that I've shown you that so far the multiverse just does not make any sense, let's see how Quantumania manages to destroy it even more, despite the fact that this is designed to be the main stepping stone for the whole multiverse arc for the next few years. So Janet Van Dyne was trapped in the quantum realm for several decades, and as this was set before Endgame and Loki, the multiverse wouldn't have existed before then, which means the only version of Kang that would have existed would have been He Who Remains, who is currently at the end of the main MCU universe's timeline. There also wouldn't be anyone else in the quantum realm besides her, as all other universes would have been destroyed and no one would be able to travel here. Except now it's established that not only does Janet know that there's an entire city in the quantum realm made up of other individuals who have travelled from other universes, but she has met a version of Kang here, and she knows that he has the ability to travel between different universes. And before you say anything, He Who Remains was shown to have complete control over the multiverse and the different aspects of it, and he knows about the quantum realm because he allowed the Avengers to do their time heist.
We're not here to talk about the Avengers.
Oh no?
No. What they did was supposed to happen.
So there's absolutely no reason why a surviving Kang from the multiversal war would be here, because He Who Remains would have eliminated him to stop any damage to his timeline. And before you tell me that this makes complete sense because we saw a city at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, no it doesn't. If it was described that there were natives off the quantum realm who made this city, that would make sense. It would explain why it's there and how Janet managed to get all of her clothes and equipment. But this city wasn't built by natives. It's Chronopolis. It was built by Kangs and it's got other people from other universes living in it. The city being in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Janet having new clothes and equipment doesn't contradict anything. The city being controlled and built by Kang does. So now not only has this film managed to completely contradict Loki and everything established in that show, it's now just gone out of its way to retcon lore into the MCU. Not only have they just taken Kang and randomly inserted him in here, if this Kang was such a threat, don't you think Janet's main priority should be to warn everyone as soon as she got out? But no, we've already seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we know that she really doesn't seem to be that scared or worried about the possibility of Kang conquering her home and killing the people she cares about. Kang's two main goals in this film is getting his multiversal traveler fixed and killing Janet and causing her life misery. And she knows how powerful he is, but she just doesn't seem to mention anything to anyone. Surely she should be running for her life by the time Hank finds her. Honestly, the funniest thing about this is that Kevin Feige insisted that there was someone employed in the MCU whose job it is to keep track of the MCU and its timeline so that everything makes sense. And I envy that guy because he's probably getting paid tens of thousands to clearly not do his job, because this film not only makes some gaping flaws appear in previous films, it basically makes the entire premise of Loki redundant and nonsensical. And that show is getting another season, so I have no clue how that's going to tie in with everything. Honestly, at this point I didn't have much faith in the MCU, but the fact that the people behind this film just took a Kang that shouldn't have existed until after Janet got rescued from the quantum realm, and retconned him into her past so that he can be a big bad of this film is some of the laziest bits of writing I've ever seen, even amongst everything Phase 4 showed us. So just to emphasize this for people who really don't understand how bad this might be for me, this film just completely neutralized any interest I might have in the future development of the MCU, because they will literally just change past events and characters in the MCU just because they can't be bothered to work harder to make their story make sense. The only MCU film I'm going to have any interest in is Deadpool 3, and that is purely because I like Ryan Reynolds, I love Hugh Jackman, and I love Logan. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was designed to be the start of Phase 5 and to keep people invested in the future multiverse arc, and all it's done is completely killed my interest stone dead. Thank you for watching. Honestly, this film just annoyed me so much because the main premise of this film is just so lazily shoehorned in. But the MCU has been going downhill for years now, and this is just another nail in the coffin, I guess. It's just a shame because despite how okay they were, they never really pushed any boundaries. I still liked the Ant-Man films. They weren't amazing, but they were entertaining for me. And the fact that they wasted a possible arc just to get this lazy multiversal war starter film in his place instead of a proper third film, it hurts, you know? But yeah, I would really appreciate if you could like and subscribe. If you're feeling very generous, maybe check out some other videos, and maybe if you're feeling very generous, consider my Patreon. But apart from that, I hope you have a great day, and hopefully I will see you in the future.